Human Anatomy and Physiology 2, Reproductive Systems of the Fetal Pig. A critical first step is to determine whether you're looking at a male or a female fetal pig. This is relatively straightforward, particularly if some of the external features are intact. And primarily you're looking for identifying the umbilical cord, because in males the urogenital orifice is just posterior to the umbilical cord, whereas with the female it's localized just beneath the tail. First we'll start with the male reproductive system. This male has been partially dissected to open up the abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity, and there's some pins there that we'll look at later. Here's the umbilical cord. And to orient you, to the right would be the rostral side or the anterior side of the pig. Again, very clear is the umbilical cord. And just posterior to the umbilical cord is a urogenital orifice. An incision has been made posterior to the urogenital orifice in the skin, right here, and the skin is called the prepuce. And it lies above the penis, so because we have this cut, we can see underneath the penis running medially and posterior. The penis continues to run posterior under this tissue where it encounters a number of glands that we'll look at in more detail later. A relatively clear internal feature here with the pin in it is the urinary bladder, which extends down into the urethra. On either side are the umbilical arteries. Urinary bladder, umbilical arteries. Together these three structures make for a pretty handy landmark, and here the umbilical vein's been cut. In a mature male, sperm production occurs in the testes. And shown here with the white pin is the left testis. It's an ovoid structure, it's relatively clear. Just outside the testis is the coiled structure here, tightly coiled, with the purple pin in it, the epididymis, which would store sperm for maturation. So the white pin here is the testis, purple pin here identifying the epididymis, and that's anchored via the gubernaculum, which is the pin here with the teal head, to the pouch and the scrotum, right here, identified as the silver-headed pin. Sperm leaving the epididymis would travel up the ductus deferens, identified with the silver-headed pin, which is traveling underneath the spermatic cord here. It contains lymphatic, nervous, and circulatory tissue. The ductus deferentia merge here. So here you can see the left and the right ductus deferentia merging. Just below that, with the pink-headed pin, is the seminal vesicle. Sperm would then travel through the urethra and then encounter secretions from the bulbourethral gland, shown here with the white-headed pin. It's relatively clear. And those are the major features of the male reproductive system. Now we'll look at structures of the female reproductive system. The structure here is a urinary bladder. It's identified by the needle with the yellow head, and it leads down into the urethra, the needle with the white head. On either side of the urinary bladder are the umbilical arteries, shown here. And again, this is a pretty striking feature, just as it was with the male. We'll look in a little more detail in a few moments at these structures up here, the uterine horns, and the uterine tube, and they merge here. And just to give you some broad perspective, after they merge, they lead into the uterine body, or the body of the uterus, shown here, then into the vagina, shown here, and then lastly, the most posterior structure, the urogenital sinus. These loosely coiled tubes are relatively easy to identify, and they lead up to the ovary. So shown here is the left ovary. Eggs would be produced here in a mature female, and after ovulation would travel down the uterine tube and then into the uterine horn, which is a little broader. This extensive sheet of connective tissue shown here is the broad ligament. It extends out to and connects various regions of the uterine tube and horn. So that's the ovary, uterine tube, and uterine horn. If you pull back the oviducts and the broad ligament in the uterine horns, you see this feature here, which is the round ligament. It's rather distinct. Now we can return to the original view and see where the uterine horns merge. They lead into the body of the uterus, or the uterine body, which leads into the vagina. And after it merges with the urethra, the urogenital sinus, ultimately to the urogenital orifice. A quick review: these pins are in the uterine body, the vagina, and the urogenital sinus.